Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Yeah, thanks for listening to the Win with Dice podcast. This is the podcast all about tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to the hobby, so we like to talk about the games that we run and the games that we play and the cool, wonderful people we get to experience the hobby with. If this is your first time hearing about tabletop RPGs, what are you doing? Go find yourself a table and go have some fun. And if you are a player at someone's table, maybe it's your turn to, be the GM.
Yeah. So this week we are taking a look at CAIN, the new RPG by Tom Bloom. This came out, I think by the time this episode's out, it's been out for like a couple weeks at this point. So it's got a very interesting premise. It's got some very cool art. Definitely excited to talk about this book and get into the actual game itself because Ramon has recently played in it and I've only read like a few pages, but I'm very curious how the actual play went. But before we get into all that, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Yes, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week, brought to you by Calvin. Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah. So this is less of a tip and more just me stealing an interesting mechanic that I came across. I was recently running a Starfinder 2nd edition one-shot using a scenario that was published, Shards of the Glass Planet, which I think I mentioned last week. It had some, I will say, interesting alien designs. But one thing that I liked about it is there's a certain part of the adventure where the players are doing some investigating. And the way the investigation is set up is that over a number of rounds, you'll do a number of skill checks. Those skill checks take you 15 minutes of in-game time to do, and you'll learn certain information based on the successes of those checks, especially given like if players are working together on those and things like that. And you have a certain number of rounds that from the GM side, the players can go a certain number of rounds before an event happens. So they have about an hour or so to do the investigating that they have to do before an event happens. And then after that event goes on, the investigations that they've done, either as you go on, you'll reveal some things narratively, or it will turn up to be something useful in the course of the fight. And I just kind of like the mechanic of that because you can sort of give players information as they go on. And while they might not get all the information, I think it's very unlikely they'll come away with no information. Although, anything's possible in a D20 game. But I just like the idea of it. I like that it gives the players a chance to explore an area, choose what they want to look at, choose what skills they're, really good at or what they want to work on with people. In the example in the game, there are also like NPCs around, so there's another opportunity to just do some RP with those NPCs or even have the players RP between themselves, which is always better.
Yeah, for sure. I like it's kind of like the gamification of it, right? Like kind of just having like the rewards right laid out ahead of time, so at least if the players will get something out of it with a couple of good rolls, they don't have the whole picture, which I think is like a better experience and also kind of cool for replayability as the GM, because like you might have a group go through in this adventure specifically and it's like they missed like a whole bunch of stuff and the next group got like something different, and then that made that story unique for those people, right? Especially because like this game is a what do I want to say? It's like a society game. I don't remember which you
well, it's a scenario. You can use it for organized play. It gives you the relevant information and resources for that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of times, if you are so lucky to be able to run your campaign again for new people, which is always super awesome, maybe just build that into your world a little bit, add it in so have all the options for players to find out stuff, but maybe this group will go through and find a different path.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff in these scenario games, even in that one specifically, that what is the information that's laid out will specifically say like players can go in multiple different directions with this thing. They can fight this enemy or they can try to pacify it somehow. I don't know. I like having that. It's an extra layer of preparedness that I should probably do more of in my own homebrew games.
I mean, as a person who's called a napkin GM, where I make up all my ideas on a piece of paper right before, yeah, I think I can learn from that too.
Fair.
Well, folks, there's your tip of the week. Just Calvin, summarize this.
Just borrowing mechanics from other stuff, but also just laying out your investigations in a way that allow players to explore an area, interact with NPCs, interact with each other, and just in general, like, it's not just it is a bunch of skill checks, but if you structure it differently, it feels more like RP.
Yeah, for sure. And let's jump into this review, because I think the investigation tip would be really pertinent to this game too.
Indeed.
Because it's kind of a part of the Buffalo in this game as well, like a pretty big part actually.
Yeah. So, Ramon, do you want to explain what CAIN is for people who don't know?
So CAIN is kind of like I call it a spooky RPG, but like it's not heroic, it's not adventurous. It's about humanity facing its worst sins. So you as like the players, you play as like I guess clandestine psychic soldiers who have the propensity to have cool psychic powers to go ahead and go fight psychically formed demons. I guess they're not demons, they're called sins, but they're basically like a reflection of the bad psychic vibes from either like, you know, a post-mortem human being having a bunch of like, I guess, desires that were unfulfilled, or a psychically adapted person who doesn't realize that they've manifested this like malevolent being into existence. But you as yourself, as a exorcist, is what you're called, is somebody with these sin powers, but you were, I guess, found out or brought into the organization beforehand, and you were fine-tuned with grace to go ahead and fight these evils, and to stop people from obviously getting hurt and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of, a lot of the art's really evocative. I'll try to maybe squeeze some of it into the episode, but it looks very cool. It definitely has like a very clear tone that it's going for, and from what I saw of the gameplay, at least at the start, I think that definitely comes through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think I'm doing that great of a justice because Tom's writing's really good. But yeah, it has the inspiration is from if you've ever, well, you definitely haven't, but if the listeners have ever like watched Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen, that kind of like secret organization of psychic wizards who go ahead and defeat demons, right? But humanity as a whole does not know of the existence of these psychic phenomenons, so you have to be very sneaky beaky about it, or the cops are going to show up and be like, why are you punching air? Yeah, no, it's super cool. It's also super, I want to say like real, but it's like you specifically in this organization is called out in like different color text that you are a tool, a weapon to be used, you know, like in like this super government organization called CAIN, which is the title of the game, and you are expendable. You are not considered human, so you know war crimes could happen to you, and they would be like, oh, sorry, dude, like nothing we could do about it. Like you don't have any rights because you have, you know, crazy sin powers and obviously are abomination, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was like an interesting tonal thing that I was wondering about, especially like there's a lot of tabletop games where it's like, you are the hero, you are the most important person in the universe, the story and the world revolve around you because you are the best of the best. Whether you're like a fantasy hero or a space hero, or especially superhero RPGs, there's a lot of focus on making your characters feel very powerful in the face of whatever odds there are, but also like very free to act, at least like narrative, or not narratively, but just by the terms of the rules in the games themselves. So it's interesting for this one to start out of the gate with like, yes, you have this power, but you don't necessarily have your own freedom or your own history to yourself. Yeah.
I mean, I think too, it's like the game is very hard on the players. Not that like it's just asking a lot from the players, and like it's not like the game expects you to get hurt and beat up and destroyed, right? Like that's inherent. Or it's the game expects the players to push themselves against the odds, because the things that they're fighting, the things that go bump in the night, like that stuff is like like you guys are expendable for a reason, but you still are the only people who are capable of dealing with it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's just kind of one of those things where death happens often if things go south.
Yeah.
Although
I mean,
gladly nobody died when we played. I only played for about half the session, though I wasn't able to stay the entire time. But yeah, we definitely encountered one of those one of the sins, and yeah, it was pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think this government agency would be nicer to the people who are the only ones capable of dealing with these threats, but reality of the situation, I suppose. I mean, I did see some mechanics that sort of implied, like, as you take damage, you do get, like, a currency that you can spend later. I think that's interesting because that's, again, not something that comes up a whole lot, at least from games that I'm personally aware of. I was having a conversation recently about the Sentinels RPG doing that, but yeah, I am curious about some of the mechanical stuff, and I am curious about the actual game that you played. I'm not sure which one you'd rather start with, though.
Let's do mechanics system actually on the page. I'm looking at the page right now.
Right.
So yeah, it's a D6 game. There obviously Tom has made some crazy cool character sheets, as well as like a hunt sheet that the GM gets to basically get all the information on the hunt about, and it's super cool. You need like a paper and pencil to kind of do the markings of stuff. The game works on kind of like a slash system, and the way that I guess the clocks, or like I would call them like HP bars or whatever the tracking thing that you're tracking, they're called talismans. And talismans have like a size, so kind of like a clock, where a clock has a size but talisman just has a size. And every time something happens, you mark a slash on the talismans, or a number of slashes on the talismans. And once a talisman is full, usually a bad thing happens, actually. So talismans are, for the most part, just bad things.
So is it is it tracking time? Is it tracking progress, or is it just like either one, depending on what you need?
A talisman represents all of it, so it's like
Okay.
a clock. So let's say like there's like a situation where it's like, I don't know, the ceiling will collapse, right? We had one where it's like the ceiling will collapse, and every time like something would happen, there's a chance for the ceiling to get worse, and once there's enough like slashes onto the ceiling will collapse talisman, it basically comes true.
Okay.
Like that's how the game kind of works. And as well as like the D6 system, basically it's a 4+ succeed on like a regular roll. On a hard roll, it's a 6+ that's required, and you roll a bunch of dice, whatever equal to the situation. You get a bunch of advantages, so you roll a number of D6 based on your advantages. So I think there's like a maximum of advantage you can take. As well as like your skills as well. Gives you, for every pip of point into whatever skill that's relevant that you're using, you roll a d6, and then you take the highest result. 6 is the highest result. So for hard rolls, you need a 6. Regular rolls, you need a 4+. And on a risky roll, the GM actually rolls. And in this game, the GM doesn't roll for much unless there's a risky roll involved. So in a risky roll, the higher the result, the better off players are. The lower the result, the closer you get to 1, the worse things get.
Right.
And
yeah.
this game runs. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I did want to go into the risky roll because I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. I again, like you had mentioned, like the GM doesn't really roll, or the admin doesn't really roll a lot in this game. But if you're doing something risky, they roll a d6, and because results are very narrative here in this game, the lower your results, then the much like you can get worse than expected consequences, even on like a success.
Yeah, exactly. So like the only thing on a risky roll, if the GM rolls a 6, that's like, you know, the consequences are lighter. All of a sudden that, you know, there's a better opportunity. That never happened to us. We got a lot of 1s, so it was pretty bad.
Dice love consequences, man.
Yeah, I love how simple it is too. He just lays it out here. A simple table. It's just 1, much worse. 2 to 3, worse. 4 to 5, it's expected, and then 6, better.
Yeah.
Never seen a better before, but that's fine. Things never went accepted. It was pretty much worse or much worse.
Those dice are brutal.
Yeah, they were. So yeah, technically during play, the admin's kind of just doing reactive things and setting up stuff, like setting up talismans. Talismans are like, could be obstacles. It could be a thing called threat, where like, you know, there's like an action that is going to happen if people don't put enough slashes onto it. So I guess, sorry, I should say like if talismans aren't always bad, but like talismans, you have to deal with them, or your actions will have effects on talismans, basically. And I guess like the way that the game plays out is within scenes, so there's no kind of free flow narrative. There's no maps. There's none of that tactical stuff. It's a purely narrative game where, you know, the players want to go do something. The admin just says yes or no, and you know, you do some die rolls and stuff like that. There's lots of tracking of tension and pressure that we get into later. Well, tension's basically like when you guys are on the hunt. It's like after every roll or action taken in a scene or a scene passes, the tension will go up, and after 3 times it's 3 ticks on the tension talisman, the pressure goes up, and the pressure is kind of like the gauge of the sin kind of getting more powerful. So that's like, it's like your smaller clock and your bigger clock. That's what I think of it as.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like when exorcists are going on a hunt, there's a time limit, and you have to like find where it is and then go beat it up, and also figure out the mystery behind it. And for every sin, there's a bunch of questions that can be asked about the situation, and if you find answers to it, that'll be beneficial during the time when you finally like confront the sin and attempt to defeat it. And you get like bonuses if you figure that out. So it's a lot of like it's basically just like paranormal investigating, and then as like the episode, if I imagine it as like a TV show, as the episode gets closer and closer to its climax, more and more is revealed, and then the players are able to defeat the monster, supposedly.
So how much do the exorcists know, like, going in? Like, do you know like the level of danger? Do you know like the location of it? Like, what do you have as your base information before you start investigating?
I mean, I was a player in that game, so I didn't really look at the GM rules too hard.
Sure.
But basically, like, you should know like what kind of sin you're going up against, and there's a bunch of different ones based off of like there's a couple different types that come with different characteristics and stuff like that, and they have their own questions to ask. You also know the category, which is like the cool kind of, I guess, level system in the game, because so the categories are from 1 to 7, and I kind of think of them as like category like storms, like, you know, category storms, like how it has like basically it characterizes how powerful a thing is based on like, you know, like relative stuff, like how much people does it count as, right? Like what size area, you know, a category 3 or 4 thing is, or like something like that, right? So let's say you're fighting like a category 3 toad sin, then, you know, that has a bunch of implications where it's like this thing is like specifically powerful and has a bunch of abilities referencing like what kind of category it happens to be, or like what the effect is and stuff like that. So, and that also goes for the players' powers. The players go from category 1 to 5, and category 0 is a human, so that's like the baseline. But specifically, exorcists are not humans.
Okay, so in the investigation process, like, what are you trying to figure out then? What are you trying to figure out from there? Or do you want to just get into like the actual game itself, because that might be easier to explain that if you.
I was gonna wait till we get to sins to explain like what the investigation is kind of like.
Fair enough. Well, yeah. What about making your character then? Like, did you create your character, or did you have like pre-gens for that?
Oh, no, we made our characters.
Okay, cool. So yeah, let's get into the actual exorcist. Like, how do you create a character in this game?
So, exorcists are made up of 3 parts, basically. It's just your skills, which, like I mentioned before, it's kind of like Blaze in the Dark. I guess it's the kind of D6 system where, like, every point you put into a skill, you roll that many dice. Your agenda, which is kind of like, it's almost like your, I wouldn't call it class, but it's like your archetype of like a thing, right? And then blasphemies is like your, what kind of wizard are you, right? It's how your psychic abilities manifest. So like your agenda is kind of like, I guess it would be your class, but your blasphemies would be like what your powers are. So for the skills, you have like force, conditioning, which is like force is like doing the violence. Conditioning is kind of the athletic stuff. Coordination is doing the violence, but like with more precision, or like doing things with precision. Covert is covert, you sneaking around. Interfacing is kind of like the tech skill, so like interacting with technologies, using vehicles, that kind of stuff. Investigation is like you kind of like understanding stuff, doing an investigation. Authority is like leading or like demanding from people stuff. Surveillance is like obviously tracking and like surveilling areas. Negotiation is obviously negotiating people, working with them. And connection is to kind of understanding people and being more empathetic and getting to know people, which I think I probably should have used connection. That would have been useful a lot of times. As well as like psyche. Psyche is actually, you don't get to interact with the skill, as in like you don't get to choose or modify this skill. The skill is tied to your category or your level, and it's basically like psychic is your use the psychic skill button. It's kind of like if people are familiar with Tom's games, it's kind of like Grit from Lancer, where this stat is not tied to your choices, it's tied to your level.
Okay.
And it lays out the skills, like the actually choosing skills is pretty cool, because like you set all of them to 1, and then you raise 2 of them to 2, and then you lower 3 of them to 0, which I thought was like, oh, that's a cool way of dealing with like how do you put pips into stuff. It made it a little bit more, I guess, easier for my character, because I can just be like, okay, which ones do I think my character would be good at? And then, immediately I'm like, okay, then which ones I think the character would be bad at, right? So, and it was kind of cool, kind of building characters with the party, the rest of them, because, we were able to kind of talk about like, areas we were lacking and, what skills we might need, and kind of spreading stuff around a little bit more.
Okay. Did your agendas and your blasphemies also come into play with regards to that? Or was it mostly on skills?
Well, not for me, because there's some agendas. So kind of moving to agendas, I guess. Do you want to take a look at those?
Sure. Yeah, the agendas and the blasphemies I was kind of curious about, just how they help create the base for your character.
Yeah, for sure. So if you played, if listeners, Calvin's never played this. If you played Icon before, agendas are kind of like I forget what they call an icon, but basically they're like the way you get XP. So under like the agendas, there's list items, and it's like if you get like basically during the hunt, if these things were true that happened, like your character, like for instance the first one, the beast, if you got into a fight, you get an XP, but if you hold back, you get like, and you got into a fight, you get like bonus XP essentially. And every time you level up.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering. So the 2 items that you have, I note that one is bold. So does that mean it has to be combined with the other?
Yeah, the bolded item also gets you XP or again for 2 or more. So like if I think you just get, that's like you get more XP. Like one, like get into a fight is like like the regular one, and then the other one gets you more XP.
Okay.
And also you can also swap agendas around, and basically you get to carry over one of your items. So when you level up, you get like choices to kind of upgrade stuff, and you can upgrade your agenda, not upgrade, but like switch your agenda. So like if I was the beast before, I want to be doomed, but I get to carry over like getting into a fight. So that's the way you can like get more XP, because you can complete more things.
Oh, so then you add your agenda items onto the new agenda that you're choosing.
Yes, and like you also get like a agenda power or ability, and from the list, and as you level up or change agendas, you get to carry over one, if I believe. And like for instance, like the beast, right? The first one is insects! ! You get +1 die when inflicting harm or violence against a human opponent. And if you chose like force to do it, then therefore like and you got 2 pips in it for first level, this ability will get you +1 dice. So you'd roll 3 dice at base for harming a human being. So if you wanted to pile drive somebody, you could just pile drive somebody, and like they're all kind of like the agendas are kind of like that, where it's like you get to have like an ability that is beneficial when you're doing a very specific thing, and it's also the way that you get XP like in the game.
Oh, okay, I see. I mean, I was actually wondering how often you'd be fighting like normal humans, but I guess that might come up in the course of the investigation.
Well, I mean, so these spooky ghosts, I mean, you're a clandestine organization, so like you aren't with the police, right? Like they don't know what you're doing, and you're also armed to the teeth, so they're just going to try to arrest you all the time. As well as like these manifestations might be from people in high power. Maybe they hired personal security, right? Like, or requires you to break into somewhere. So, there's like security guards. Heck, these are crazy psychic ghosts. I mean, you might be fighting cultists. That might be a thing too, right? Like, so the people are always involved in situations, whether you're talking to them or punching them in the face. You're never just gonna fight this ghost entity by itself.
Right.
Very much like humans confronting the worst of humanity kind of deal.
Okay. So what about the blasphemies as well?
Okay, so blasphemies are like the super cool psychic powers, and there's 12 of them, and they're all kind of grouped together, I guess, kind of tangentially. Like there's 12, and they're kind of like color coded to your flavor. I don't know. Would you want to just go through them, Calvin, or I could just talk about the little blurbs that Thomas put here for them? But I chose the gate one because, again, if the fans of JJK out here that are listening, I love my man Toto to death. So if there is an opportunity where I can teleport people around, I'm gonna choose it. Calvin, you want to watch Jujutsu Kaisen, Calvin. It's
I still have to finish Gundam Wing first.
Oh my gosh.
I only have a few episodes left. All right, well then for the purposes of this, let's focus on the gate instead of going through all of them one at a time.
Yeah, for sure. So gate, so they're like, these psychic manifestations are kind of cool because they're like physical stuff, the metaphysical stuff, they're like spooky psychic, like invading people's mind stuff, and then there's all sorts of cool psychic phenomena that you can do. So every blaspheme level one you choose one, you get like a passive bonus ability, and a 2 blasphemy ability or sin abilities that you get to use during your game. And I forgot to mention one important thing. So all these psychic abilities, they do come at a cost. So every time you use one of these things, you have to burn something called a psych burst. And everybody has 3 psych bursts. Like every exorcist has 3 psych bursts they can use. So all of the abilities will require you to spend a psych burst, but also making this kind of like a little bit like Lancer, it's kind of like a little bit of a heat mechanic into it. You can also instead take D3 sin, which is marked on the sheet and does not get removed. So if you take a rest, you can regain back a certain amount of psych bursts. But in terms of like the sin, it kind of stays in your character. And once you get 10 sin, you get a sin mark, which is you get like a cool ability, but you're just slowly morphing into like a sin. You get like crazy eyes or claws or something like that, right? If you get like 3 sin marks, you fully turn into a sin, kind of deal.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's like permanent. Oh, okay, that's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of like that power at what cost, right? Like I love mechanics like that where you can just be like, well, you know what? Forget this. Like I'm gonna go all out.
Just this once, 30 times.
Yeah. Yeah. So for gate, the passive ability is pocket. So basically, you get to have like a pocket dimension where you can put stuff in. You get your own personal bag of holding. And the way the game manages kind of inventory stuff. So kit points, basically. Kit points. I forget which game this is kind of pulling off of. I want to say like it's Apocalypse World, but they represent just like items that you have, but you don't have to keep track of. It's just that like weapons and stuff require like 2 kit points. like a notebook and pencil requires 1 hit point. So anytime you need it as a character, it's just assumed that you can like pull that out, right? So pocket allows you to get 1 extra kit point, and as well as like you get to store up to 3 kit points of stuff in your pocket dimension. And this is like attached to your clothes. So like if your clothes are destroyed, the items just pop out, which I think would be hilarious. I'm sure you can like have some weird Rube Goldberg thing where your like jacket is full of bombs, and then you just like throw your jacket into a fire, and then the fire immediately explodes all the bombs, and does this like convoluted thing.
I was thinking like Sonic, where you die and all your random junk flies out of you, like the rings flying out of Sonic. But
it specifically
you can actually
says
use it for a strategy. That's much more interesting.
Yeah, no, specifically it says your clothes, like the pocket's attached to your clothes, so if they're destroyed, the items pop out, which I think is so good. Like, and Gate is the one where you mess around with space, so you can like the 2 abilities I chose was Transmission, where you're able to like to basically teleport yourself to a certain distance away. And it utilizes like the category system again. So all these abilities have like category range. So this transition is like instant, so it instantly happens. Category +2 range. So if you go back to like for category, so if you're level 1, category 1, you can transmission up to category 3 distance away. So if category 1 would be same room, but category 3 is like down the block. So right after jump, you can teleport your character down the block. But it comes at it is risky, and like a lot of the stuff here is pretty risky. So like a lot of them tend to have like questions the GM gets to ask you, and for every no, the GM rolls a d6, and then on a result of a 1 for any of those d6, stuff happens. So for transmission, it's like, are you familiar with your destination? Can you see where you're going? And are you calm and concentrated? So like and then if you roll a 1, if you say no on any of those and they end up rolling a 1, you end up in a different location but nearby to your destination. But if you roll double 1s, you end up somewhere briefly else before arriving, and also you suffer like D3 stress, and you only have 6 stress before you get like a wound or injury, and you only can have 3 injuries in total until you die, essentially.
Okay.
So there's lots of room. I like this game because there's lots of room for things to go bad and for you to get hurt but still be able to like proceed on, right? Like you're coming out of this battered and bruised and wrecked up and like full of sin, but like you get the job done. The whole idea is like your character will never leave a hunt unscathed. Like it's kind of impossible unless you roll. The luck is literally all in your favor. It's impossible for any exorcist to go through a hunt unscathed.
Yeah, that seems to be sort of the intent here, especially if there's something that like creates like permanent damage or that's very difficult to get rid of. It seems like the intent is that for you to get to whatever the highest level is, as your character progresses, I think he's up to category 5, you're going to come up there with some scars and leftover damage from your progress. And again, that's not something that you see in some of the more popular like D20 games. Yeah, of course. And like again, like the basically the base D20 games like D&D, there's not a lot of inherent risk involved. I mean, there's like gameplay risks, but nothing like kind of baked in, and I don't think that like the core gameplay of D&D or based Roll20 games, even like Pathfinder, is that like your heroes will hurt themselves. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like, adventuring is inherently dangerous, but you are still epic heroic heroes, and the idea is not to kill you. The idea is to challenge you. I think this game is actually just trying to kill you. Yeah, seems like.
Well, like in a good way.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting how, because like now I want to be like in a longer term game of this. because it seems like it's going to be very difficult to get back to like a base point, or like is it like a point like starting fresh, as opposed to like just being able to heal very quickly and other things.
Yeah, well, even the healing mechanic too, it's like the rest mechanic. So basically you roll 2d3s and then you get to apply those numbers to either regain psych burst points that you spent, take off stress, or reduce an ongoing talisman by a certain amount. Right? So it's like, but you have to apply those numbers individually. It's not like you roll, like if you roll a 1 and a 3, you have to choose where to apply that 1 and 3 separately. Not like you can't split them up, which is like, I learned the hard way, and I was like, wow, this game's tough. Like, this game is like just basically tough decisions, the game, which is super fun.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that. I like that the mechanics of the game are pushing you towards that.
Yeah, and if you do end up dying, actually, you can. There's rules to say that you could just tell the GM, no, I don't die, and then you just fully become a sin if you would like to. Like if you choose not to die, you can just go supernova and become a bad guy if you would like to. At that point, you cease being a character, obviously, and at any point during the mission, like there is opportunity for like an evac, but you don't get paid, and things get much worse.
Shoot. Well,
yeah, I think you might get reprimanded. I didn't look at the rules too hard about like if you failed a mission, but I think you might lose some money and like get docked some pay.
I do think it's interesting that you get paid, to be honest.
Well, I mean, so like the organization is like being an exorcist, like you don't have the freedoms of people. Like you're not a person, you have rights. So like the more actually as you get higher up in the organization or go on more missions, like you just get more freedoms. And like even like base level, like as in like starting gear, all you get is just like a jacket, some weapons, and like someone else's shoes. Like you don't even get your own shoes. Like the shoes are just recycled. You just get a service uniform.
Damn.
It's not tailored to fit, then the shoes are recycled. So like you're just like the bottom of the bottom. And if you manage to go through like your first mission, you get something called script, which is like the money, and you can spend your script on stuff. And the funniest part is like aesthetic. There's like a bunch of them, right? So aesthetics, they have no benefit at all, but like, if you can spend some scripts, so you can have like some finer materials, like shit just fits. You could spend one script to get some shoes that's comfortable. Like, just the setting of this game is so funny. Like, it just inherently, even though you're the exorcist, you're the heroes of the story, like people still treat you like shit. Like from the jump, you got to earn it. Yeah, you got to earn it. You got to get those scars. I love it. I mean, it's so good.
I guess they go through these guys pretty quick then.
Yeah,
that's kind of the vibe I'm getting.
The vibe of exactly right. It's so good. It's just like kind of it's almost kind of like the Suicide Squad feel, where it's like, this is a bunch of jabrones, and if they die, like whatever. They basically just every mission's a suicide mission. and they can just, maybe they'll just like nuke the site if things get really, really bad. But you have no rights again as like being the exorcist. So if anything, they can just wipe whatever off the map, and you don't count towards that. But the funny part is too, if you are able to bring back a body part or a dead body of one of your teammates, you get some money and some XP from it, because the whole organization is kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they find a way to recycle whatever's left of that person, or just their clothes.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, or just their clothes. Yeah, the shoes. They have to get the shoes back, right? Like,
it's like Lethal Company vibes.
Yeah, it is Lethal Company vibes. But you get way more information than you do when you're playing Lethal Company.
True.
But yeah, I like this because it's like I always kind of want that experience for players, and as a player, as that your character is like unique, right? And the experiences that they go through are unique. So it's kind of like there's so many like things that could happen to your character that I don't think any character going through the same scenario or hunt would end up being the same, will end up coming out the same, right? Or getting the same gear or choosing the same options or whatever, right? There's just so much variety. and it makes it feel like this. If you're going through all these harrowing experiences, you come out a different person.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally, right?
It kind of seems like you build your character's, like, not backstory, but just your character's story in play as opposed to coming in with a backstory.
Well, even like for character creation, Tom has some funny ass questions that he asks you at the beginning, right? So first one, obviously, like, how do you first manifest your powers? That's pretty chill, right? Where is your sin seed, your brain or your heart, which is like, where do you get your sin powers from, right?
Yeah.
Right. What do you hide in the deepest parts of you? Now now we're getting deeper, right? Wow. Okay, that's kind of spooky. Is your hand your hand?
Ooh. Sounds like no.
Right? I mean, I said yes, but some people said no. And then, do you remember the face of your mother? And I'm like, what? What does that mean? Tom, why are you so crazy?
That's just a question in character creation.
Exactly.
So I guess that's sort of the implication of maybe like how long you've been in this, or just how much is left of your past and your own memories, or how much of that even matters to you now.
I mean, that's up to you, friend. I think that's the point is to like get the vibe of the game and get the vibe of your character, because there's some weird questions.
Interesting.
Yeah, and let's go talk about the sins, because that's pretty cool.
Because you did mention like they had different classes as well, and I was kind of curious what that meant.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's different types of sins. The administrator like picks from 6 types of sins, and the sins, you choose like a form of the sin. So you could have like the sin by itself, the sin merged with a person, or like kind of like conjoined, or like the manifestation, or the sin is like a dead person being manifest, like from their psychic ghosts. It's purely thematical, but it could set the mood between different types of sins, especially if like you choose to fight the same sin like within 2 different hunts. You can change it up. You choose a category to fight with, you choose who the sin's host is, you figure out what kind of location it is, and specifically like sins 2. Sins have a mind palace, or I guess like a palace, because they're all in the mind because it's like it's stuff. But it's kind of like, Calvin, you've ever played Persona, or the people who have played Persona, it's kind of like you're going into someone's mind palace and they have control over the area, and things are like kind of like this weird reflection of like what the sin's all about, and you have to defeat the sin in its palace to completely destroy it. You kind of go into like a pocket dimension.
Now that you mentioned Persona, I actually am seeing a bit of that in some of the creature designs.
Yes. Actually, the whole idea of like beating up psychic ghosts with your cool psychic powers, it's basically Persona. Like it's one of the inspirations Tom drew on, like you mentioned in the book. It's like Persona, Mob Psycho. What other video game did he mention? Mob Psycho is an animation. But there's like that kind of stuff, those kind of ideas. But yeah, and then every sin kind of has like a domain, which is like abilities it gets, which is kind of like, they're not abilities because the GM doesn't take a turn. The GM reacts to the player's actions. So the players would take an action, and then the sin gets to react to it. So it's kind of like this back and forth. So like they can choose to take an action, like set up like a threat. So the threat would be like, the players attacks the sin with his sword. So now the sin is going to threaten with this big ass club or something like that, and the players have to figure out how to deal with that, and it has like a talisman associated with it, and then the players have to roll and get a number of successes to mark down on the talisman to stop it from whacking somebody, and if that fails, then like they get whacked, that kind of thing. And sins are specifically tied to traumas, and these are like trauma questions. So like again, this is like humans confronting the worst parts of humanity, that kind of deal. So specifically, the first one that's kind of highlighted here is the ogre. The sin of like nothingness, like basically like depression, self-hatred, deep desire for misery, that kind of stuff. So it commonly manifests in people who are grounded to a pulp by life, bullying, debt, overworked, people who suffer from deep existential self-loathing and dealing with extreme grief. So the primary emotion here is like despair, and these ogres are just kind of like these large, imposing monstrosities. They're just kind of like, ugly versions of stuff. And yeah, and usually there's like psychic phenomena that it comes with. So it's like there's like this eerie fog that the ogre gets to kind of stalk, this miasma gets to stalk you in. And they also have like minions and stuff like that show up and have like smaller talismans and stuff like that, and they have it listed here. And just kind of like stuff like that. And the questions that they ask for the ogre specifically is like, who or what pushed you into this hole, right? Like this deep depression or grief or whatever. Or who or what is keeping you from going over the edge? So this person is like still here, or like, where these boundaries are, right? And what are you most ashamed of? So like the thing that's causing like all this existential like self-loathing. And the idea is, right, for the investigation, right, for the hunts, like you can choose to find out this information. You can choose to find out this information, but specifically you also need to find out where the Sin's palace is and defeat it in there. But if you do find this information out, during the fight, you can reveal one of the answers to these questions and basically do a bunch of damage to the Sin.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's kind of like how we talked about earlier in the episode, where it's like, giving the players like information, right, that will help them out later or during like the session or like the adventure or whatever. This is like literally baked into this game. The whole point of this game, the cycle is like, get a briefing, go on the hunt, travel through some trauma, find out some questions, and go beat up a psychic ghost. Hopefully you survive, you get some XP, but if you don't, your friends might get some XP.
Okay, so is the Sin like reacting during the course of your investigation then, like not just in the like combat itself?
Yes. So the Sin also gets to interact with the players. So the Sin can actually confront the players outside of its palace, but once it gets like, it can be beaten back, and so it doesn't have to be fully damaged. It has to only take like basically 4 hits or 4 slashes, and then it gets like forcibly like retreats or demanifested and remanifested into its palace, and it stays there while it heals up, but it still has the ability to like mess with the players. And like even the area, this like psychic phenomena kind of percolates and like does stuff to the area, and things get weird real fast. And also these Sins are threats, right, to humanity. So like people are dying, people are getting hurt, things are getting destroyed. During a game, we were tasked to like dispatching a toad, and toads are kind of like the idea of greed, and it's usually manifest from people who like are greedy, has a lot of wants, or like the idea of like wanting and the desire and like that kind of stuff is like what toads are about. And this toad was taking parts from buildings, and it was like this. It was in like, I think it was set in Brazil, and there's like in like these, I think it's called favesas. I'm not from Brazil, I don't know, but it's like a kind of like a neighborhood there where a lot of houses packed together, and then like these houses kept falling and like being like destroyed, but because the Sin was literally taking the nuts and bolts and stuff out of these houses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that was like the state when we showed up. And then through some investigation, we found out we were at a hospital. So we talked to a bunch of injured people to kind of figure out where things like was happening. So one dude got like a head injury because like it was on like this metal bridge. And then one of the pieces of the bridge kind of like the supports swung down and hit him in the head. And one dude, he was from the place where all the houses that were falling down, and one of the houses fell on him. And we got a little bit of description of what the Sin sounded like, and like things right before they were attacked. So then we went to the bridge, and using whatever skills we did, someone climbed up, or I climbed up to like the top, and I found that like it looks like the the toad was stealing the bolts attaching to the bridge, and that's how this dude got hurt. And then we ended up confronting the toad there and having a fight on the bridge, which got way out of hand real fast, as the toad was basically just stealing all the nuts and bolts from the bridge and causing the bridge to collapse on us while fighting us.
Ooh.
Which is wild.
Okay.
And like when you are confronting, like you are armed to the teeth as like a exorcist, but when you are confronting a sin, all rolls are hard when you're using mundane weaponry against them. So, which means that you need to show a 6+ to have a success. But if you want to fight a sin, you can use psychic powers work against them, or every exorcist has a psych burst ability, which is basically you make a psychic attack with your psyche to do damage, and that's just like a regular roll. That's a 4+, you get a success.
Okay, but those are risky in different ways because you have to manage your resources or push yourself.
Yeah, or get a bunch of or push yourself, right? Yeah, that's it. I mean, just make yourself, and there's like, it is. I'm not good at this stuff. That's why I'm kind of like this. If for me to run this game, like I'm a big gorilla man. I don't really do cool investigating mystery stuff very well. But it's too cool not to try. I think.
Yeah. Oh man, I kind of wish. Well, I mean, it's just when the game came out. Because now part of me wants to run this over on the USB channel during like Halloween or something.
Oh, this would be a great Halloween game.
I mean, I have a time slot for the holiday season. Maybe instead of Lancer, I'll do this to surprise everybody.
Everyone shows up to play Lancer, and you're like, actually, we're fighting ghosts. Yeah, so the way that kind of like things are kind of laid out, so you have like critical information kind of like about the sin, so you don't know like all of the stuff about it, like that's presented to the players, but you know like the type, the category, all that kind of stuff. But then it's like, you know, kind of, I like the way that you can work your way backwards from the trauma. So those trauma questions are really important, where like if you can answer them about like what the host is going for, because it's always a manifestation from a specific person for the most part, for like the majority of all of the sin types. You could go ahead and do that. You figure out where the palace is, you figure out hooks, and then like you kind of just make the web of like, okay, this is where the players start, this is where they need to end up, this is how you get there, right? And then start making your investigation lines. And in the book too, it has like a bunch of branching paths. I love kind of like that word cloud kind of brainstorm connection thing with a bunch of different paths for things to interact with. And then you just start the players off, and then you do your best.
Yeah. I want to go through what's written here about like creating the investigation itself, because I think that's like the most interesting part to me at the moment, and I kind of want to know how you're like intended to set that up, or like what sort of questions you have to answer for that. Because also, I mean, I feel like I can yoink some of those for other games, because I do love stealing mechanics.
I know. I'm pretty excited. Yeah. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of rules about creating investigations. I haven't really looked at it too much because I was a player. I haven't run this game yet, but I like the clear-cut starting points where you have, and even if you have to bend a little bit while you're playing, you still have like a destination, right? Which I think is like the important part. And you have like the major branches and connecting bits between them. And I like that like every sin type has their own questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like relevant to the whole theme of them being there.
Yeah, I can see these all like being their own individual, like very interesting sessions of just doing this investigation. And I don't even think the combat's going to be the most important part. It feels like the investigation is going to be the most interesting part, at least for me, just looking at it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even in the context of like the execution itself, right? So when you are in that combat scene, there's lots of like flavor stuff. Most of it's flavor stuff, right? Like, you know, the threats that you have, like Tom puts like a bunch of like blurbs, like, oh, the threat is like, if you're for the ogre, right? One of the threats you can put up is like, this thing is gonna hurl an exorcist through a wall, right? Which is like pretty bad, but you know, I'm like, but there's no like specifics of like, this will happen, right? Oh, and also sins also have a thing called afflictions that are specific for the sin. So they are debilitating, ongoing stuff that will affect the player. And also I totally forgot. There's a specific thing called like a hook, and a hook is a talisman that is kind of like attached to a player. And whenever stuff happens, like scenes go or like bad rolls happen or risky rolls happen, you roll like a 1 or something like that, you can choose to like increase a hook, or if you get another hook, you increase on a hook, and the hooks are like, a certain, like a small amount of talismans, so they fill up pretty quick. So like I think it's like up to 3. And so like for the afflictions for the ogre is like, frozen limbs. Physically, actively, or fine motor skills is hard if it requires more than 1 limb. So like you can imagine like that being kind of bad if you're like, I have to climb a ladder or something, right?
And is this just like a thing that happens in the course of the combat itself, or just as you're getting closer to it?
So like afflictions can just like happen on the hunt. Yeah, some of them are specific where it's like you can't get rid of them. Like for instance, I'm pretty sure like for the centipedes, there's like a poison that if you get poisoned by the centipede, you're actually stuck with this affliction for the rest of your career as an exorcist. Which is bad. Yeah, or like specifically like, okay, so special hook, the centipede bite. This hook counts as an affliction that can never be removed, right? It ticks up and down all the normal ways that hooks tick up. If the hook ticks up to full, you gain 1d3 sin and stress immediately. And again, whenever the pressure increases while the hook is full. The hook can be ticked down with centipede anti-venom. So for the rest of the campaign, you have to carry anti-venom with you, and you have to take it, right? Like for one of your kit points. So like, stuff like that. But that's kind of cool, right? I mean, like, maybe you are like a grizzled veteran, and like ever so often you have to like take this serum or something just to kind of keep the demons at bay, because like, getting sin and stress, I mean, obviously stress can kill you, but the sin specifically sticks with you. So like you're just basically degenerating more and more, right?
Yeah, it's just happening faster. Just your clock's ticking a whole lot faster. Rough.
Yeah, right. And even like so and the cool, I want to kind of bring up the palaces too, because palaces could be in like cool places, like for the idol, which is more about like desire, like popularity, like cult stuff. That's kind of where I'm vibing with the idol, that kind of stuff, that kind of like creepy psychic ghost that's whispering bad stuff into your ear, right? But like able to control crowds, that kind of stuff. Like palatial estates, nightclubs and concert halls, beautiful high-rise penthouses, like kind of places where like these rich, wealthy, highly charismatic, highly successful people where they would manifest palaces like from, right? Influencers, that kind of stuff, right? That would be pretty cool.
Ooh. I'm kind of imagining this thing coming out of like some really terrible streamer.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. just like the worst possible person, the worst possible streamer. And then you could have a bunch of cultists, but like you could have like, the audience, like fans, be like the bad, like the bad mooks that show up, and they like try.
They're called
like,
subscribers.
Oh yeah, subscribers, right?
Like and subscribe, by the way.
Yeah, right. And then they attack you in the streets, right? Like for likes or for I don't know what kids do these days.
I mean, they don't do it for the gram. They don't do it for the Vine. I don't know what anything is anymore.
I think I've aged out of relevancy.
Yeah, this is cool. I really like games that are able to communicate the tone they want through their rules. There's just like a lot of vibes in the mechanics of this game, as well as in the narrative it creates and how everything is described. I'm torn between whether I want to play this or run this first, but
oh yeah, for sure. I think I want to run it again. I'm very challenged when it comes to narrative stuff. I do not plan very well, and I'm mostly just a seat of a pants kind of in the violence kind of GM. So, yeah, we'll see. I think there's like some sins that are like more my speed, like the Hound. The Hound specifically is about it's like the angry one, and the more one where it's like, murder victim, someone who suffered deep injustice, someone who has been deeply wronged, bullied, that kind of stuff, has a really sense of vengeance, and I think that's like a lot easier to get across. And like they're how should I put this? They're like skulls for the skull throw and blood for the blood god kind of people, drenched in a lot of blood and sharp spines and like teeth and claws, and definitely something where you just kind of, you're like, this thing is gonna hurt me.
yeah, I'm just looking at it now. It does seem pretty intense. I don't know. I think you could probably handle especially because there's so much stuff laid out. I think you could probably do it. This is just me influencing you so I can play.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what you should do. That's your secret second tip of the week, folks. Just secretly influence your friends, saying that encourage them with kind words that they can pull something off. So you get what you want out of the situation.
Exactly. Yeah, this is cool. Ramon, is there anything you wanted to say? I don't know if you want to quickly summarize the game that you were in, or if there's anything else that you want to say about CAIN in general.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the GM, but the GM I was playing with is pretty tough on the things go bad for you. And but this game makes it really easy for things to go bad. So yeah, that was basically the game. The game was super cool, super fun. I had lots of fun times, but man, there are certain scenarios where my character, who I tend to play pretty loose as usual, could have just died immediately. But I'm here for it. And CAIN seems pretty cool. I just really was wanting kind of like a one-shot machine, right? Like system where I don't have to, like, I can just make one-shots to infinitum. And this is one of them. It's kind of like Lancer, where it's like everything's kind of built into the mission, so you can just have it. So I'm excited to run CAIN. I'm excited to play games of CAIN because it's kind of one of those like, oh shit, is it Friday night? Let's go play some CAIN and have fun for a night and not have to worry about extreme campaign syndrome where campaign's going for too long.
I have no idea what you mean.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Same, to be honest. And I do want to play more of this, but I think that's going to do it for this particular episode. There will be a link below to check out the CAIN RPG for yourself. There's the itch.io link where you can pick it up for like $10 US. So definitely go check that out. Also check out Tom Bloom on the socials and the episode we had with Tom, where we were talking about a whole bunch of Lancer stuff. It's one that I know a lot of people have enjoyed, and I thought it was really cool just to talk to like the designer of a very popular published game, just getting some insights. And we should probably have Tom again, because I think we still owe him a chance to do that AI rant.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, CAIN's out, so maybe we'll have him on to talk about CAIN. Tom, if you're listening, just hit us up. But if you're not, that's cool. We'll reach out to you.
I mean, I don't know. As long as you don't have to be listening. As long as you put the podcast playing in a tab in the background, I can take that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
All right, folks. Thanks a ton for listening. Again, go check out this game. It'll be linked below so you can give it a read through yourself. Also below, there's a list of a bunch of different Lancer writers and creators who have made third-party content for Lancer. Go ahead and check them all out if you're into the Lancer mech RPG. Check out the Soar RPG, which is the itch.io page linked below. And also check out Untold Stories Project, where I'm at occasionally. They finished the Something in the Dark Mutants and Masterminds game very recently, and there was a big twist at the end of that, so definitely go check them out. What else is going on? Oh, gaming streams. There's gaming streams on this channel as well. I played a bunch of Mecha Break over the last week, playing through the playtest of Mecha Break. So if you're curious about that game and you weren't able to get into the playtest, then go ahead and check out that gameplay. In addition, there is Alan Wake 2, which we're getting into the end game now, so I'm just going around collecting stuff. If you want to see me pet a dog, then go check that out. What else is going on? Baldur's Gate 3. Hopefully next stream we actually get to the city of Baldur's Gate. I've been playing for 80 hours. I have not got to the city of Baldur's Gate yet. It's very funny, but I want to get there already. And also playing Armored Core, which was off for a week, but that'll be back this week by the time the episode releases. So if you want to see me die against Baltius for 3 hours, that's probably what it's going to be for a couple of weeks. Is there anything else going on that we should mention?
No, I don't think so. But Cal, we should definitely just have more missiles. I think that's he wants to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, when you said more missiles, and then I saw Baltius, and his thing was like being every missile ever. I thought you did that on purpose. I didn't realize you. I thought you'd played the game already.
No, I've never played this game, and I probably won't. That looks crazy. Why would you subject yourself to that?
Yeah, if you want to know what Baltius is, imagine a mech, but in a high chair, and the high chair has a sphere around it, and the sphere is missiles.
It's just an immense amount of missiles. I'm good.
So, yeah, a lot to look forward to there. But that's gonna do it for today. So for all of our GMs and players out there who are secretly hiding their psychic powers lest they destroy themselves and those around them, just remember to keep on winning with dice. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.